They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
Brave, patriotic fighters fighting the swamp from within. Well, welcome to another episode of the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn.
And I'm Katie Gorka.
All right, and let's jump into it because you all know if you listen to the podcast with regularity, and I thank you for doing that I live in California. Katie lives in Virginia, and both of these states have a lot in common where there's a lot of lefty lunatics running around and making a lot of strange laws and making decisions we all have to live by. And in California, we have two instances, Katie, of some fighters within who are really trying to make a change in our state. I think we have to start first with the story of Gavin Newsom. He's not one of those fighters, but he is the governor of California, and he released his revised budget last week. Now, in this budget, a couple of crazy things happened. One, he decided that he was not going to fund Proposition 36, which was voted on by the voters. 70%, by the way, of California voted on Prop 36, which was going to reclassify some of the crimes that were misdemeanors back into felonies again. This is kind of undoing some of the damage that leftists did about 10 years ago with the passing of another proposition. So voters come in and say, you know what, we've gotten too crazy with crime. We need to tighten things up. And 70% of voters passed Prop 36. Well, this was something that Gavin Newsom actively worked to take down. And he announced last week at his press conference that he was not going to fund Prop 36 because of our budget shortfalls. Now, what's amazing is that California makes more revenue than states like Florida and Texas, but yet we still have a cash problem. He also at the same time promised illegal immigrants health care with Medicaid, and he grossly underestimated how much that was going to cost. And so now he's saying that the reason California is in this budget deficit is not because he got the math wrong on illegal immigrant health care, but because the state of California is in a Trump slump. Now, that couldn't be any further from the truth, but yet this is what Gavin Newsom is trying to sell to all of us.
What I found extraordinary in the analysis of this was looking at the numbers of how the spending on Medicaid has just skyrocketed. I saw a figure. In 2014, it went from 14 billion to today upwards of 40 billion. I mean, that is crazy in 10 years' time.
Yeah, and he said that he was going to have to put a pause on this healthcare, or that for the healthcare for illegal immigrants, he's going to have to put a pause on it, maybe charge the people already in the program a premium. But there are a lot of folks, including Carl DeMaio in the state legislature, who says this is all a lie. He's actually building in more money to fund this, and that he's lying to California once again. And this is of concern to everybody, whether you live in the state of California or not. He is going to run for president in 2028. There is no doubt about it. And this is something that the whole country needs to be aware of. And he is struggling to find his base. He's disenfranchised the left because he's been having conversations with big bad Charlie Kirk. He's disenfranchised the right because of his crazy policymaking. And I don't think the middle and the moderates trust him. Here's a little bit from Carl DeMaio, again, an assemblyman from San Diego, on how Newsom's budget is not going to pause illegal immigrant health care. Take a listen.
Gavin Newsom is, there's no better way to describe it. He is a pathological liar. He has screwed up so many things, and he always blames others for it. We have a homeless crisis, it's someone else's fault. We have high gas prices, it's price gouging. We have a budget deficit, it's not his spending, no. Or the fact that he's destroyed jobs in our state, it's the Trump slump. Now, mind you, as California has a $12 billion deficit, Florida has a massive surplus, so does Texas. So why is it that California has a deficit, but we all live under the same Trump economy right now with tariffs or whatever? The reality is no tariffs have been impacting prices to the extent to which it would cause a $12 billion deficit. The reason why California has a deficit is we've been overspending, and we've also been seeing revenues decline versus other states because we've been killing jobs.
Interesting cut from him. And he's right. People are leaving the state. So yes, you do have a decrease in revenue, but truly this is a spending issue all the way across the board.
I just have to say, so I met Carl DeMaio at your great Unite IE event just a couple weeks ago. I was so impressed with him then. I'm so impressed with him now for his, it's not just the bravery in speaking out, but he does the hard work to get at the truth behind the lies. And as he said, I think nobody lies more than Gavin Newsom, and Carl DeMaio exposes it. But it is so true. We are seeing, thanks to Elon Musk and the work of Doge, we are seeing just the extraordinary, not just waste, fraud, and abuse in government spending at the federal level, but also the way these federal agencies ballooned in the size of their bureaucracies. What we're not talking about enough is the degree to which the same thing is happening at the state level. Now, you gave a shout out to Florida and Texas for, doing a really good job of reining this in. I actually want to give a shout out to Virginia, too. I just learned about something that I didn't know about, which is there's been a really big effort here in Virginia to roll back regulations. And that's always, something that's very helpful. But you're right. California has done nothing to rein in the spending. And I think if you really dug in and looked at the growth of the bureaucracy, the amounts that people are making. Oh, look, some of that, we talked about that a lot during the Pacific Heights fires and that, when the Palisades fires, the crazy salaries that some of these government workers are making and just the size of the government bureaucracy, not to mention free healthcare for illegals. These are all the things that are causing these massive deficits, and it's got to change.
It really does. And people are being driven out of the state. Just this last week, there was a study that came out in the LA Times, and they were talking about what it means to be low income in Los Angeles County. Do you know what the number is?
No, I'd love to hear it.
Oh, this is I want to just take a long walk off a short pier figure. So if you make less than $118,000, you are considered to be low income.
What?
In Los Angeles County. And it gets worse. If you're in San Diego, 138,000 is what you need for San Diego. So this isn't just crazy LA, crazy San Diego. Orange County's about $118,000 as well. I think San Jose is one of the areas where you have to make even more than that to be considered low income. This is Gavin Newsom's issue, is that it's become so expensive in the state of California. We have spent on programs not to help California citizens or the working class in California. It is easy to be wealthy in California. It is easy to be poor in California, but it is not easy to be in the middle class. And this is the problem. This is what got Trump elected, is that he actually reconnected with the middle class on behalf of Republicans. Now, just a little bit more before we move on from Carl DeMaio and Gavin Newsom, because again, the priorities are just out of whack here. And Carl DeMaio made a really great point that I think is so important for all of you listening, because we always talk about what we can do and the power of one voice. And Carl DeMaio made a great statement about that. But here's a little more from Carl DeMaio on Gavin Newsom.
We went through the budget, and I always like looking at the actual budget line items. And he said, we're going to cut back on illegal immigrant health care. It's going to help us save money. The reality is he's increasing the cost of illegal immigrant health care. This year, we're spending $9.5 billion. 1 out of 4 general fund Medi-Cal dollars is being handed to an illegal immigrant this year, $9.5 billion. Next year, it's increasing to $12.1 billion. 1 out of 3 general fund Medi-Cal dollars will be going to an illegal immigrant. Does that sound like a pause or a cut? It's not. Newsom wants you to think that he's cutting back on this very generous, indefensible program for people who are non-citizens. But instead, he's actually doubling and tripling down. $12 billion is the cost for illegal immigrant health care. $12 billion is the state's budget deficit. Imagine that. But it's all Trump's fault, right? No, this guy is a proven liar. He's reckless, and he refuses to actually deal with the problem that he's created. That's why I've told people this budget is dead on arrival. We need to have public pressure to force politicians to do the right thing.
Here's what's so great about that statement. And talking to Carl DeMaio, both at the conference you and I were at together and just in private conversations, Carl DeMaio has said, this is what it's like to have a functional opposition party. We are not going to beat the Democrats in California based on sheer numbers, because there are just not enough Republicans in the Assembly or in the state Senate to do that. They are always, they have the numbers, at least as of now. That doesn't mean it can change, but we're a long way off. So he said, what we can do is reveal all of this corruption. We can talk about all of these scandals. We can get them out to a news media that seems, I can't believe I'm saying this, a local news media that seems to be listening a little bit more than maybe they used to. I mean, we've had some incredible work done by local news organizations that have uncovered the corruption of our insurance commissioner, who's been traveling God knows where for all over the world on the dime of the taxpayer while people have their houses burned down from the fire and can't get insurance. That was a local news story, local ABC News, if you can believe it. So these local news outlets are hearing it, and then what happens is people are showing up at the media, at the local meetings and at the local offices of these elected state representatives, and so that pressure means something. It's the only thing that is going to stop the chaos, and that's in my state or in any of your states. If there is something you don't like, the power of one voice to reveal the corruption, it matters. And all of a sudden you start to see a little more sanity. And one of the examples I gave you of that, Katie, is a bill that we had in California. I think we talked about an assembly bill that was set to make sex trafficking of 16 and 17-year-olds a felony. The shocker is that it was a misdemeanor, but they wanted to make it a felony, and no Democrat would vote for it until Carl DeMaio and other Republicans came out and started talking to the news media. And there was a public uprising, and the public went to these offices and told the Democrats that this was inexcusable and unacceptable. And lo and behold, what happened last Thursday? They voted to make sex trafficking a felony instead of just a misdemeanor. So we can get real wins if we are not afraid to use our voice individually. I think it is such an important lesson.
So you talk about the importance of us as Republicans having to serve as a vocal opposition for now. And the reason for that being that your state, my county, Fairfax County, are so predominantly Democrat. But, I'll tell you, one of the things that I've learned is that one of the reasons it's so Democrat is because people aren't learning about what's really happening. So here in Fairfax County, we just had a really interesting study done. It was a focus group of 8 minority voters who voted for Biden in 2020 and switched to Trump in 2024, right? Why did they, and what can we learn about that? Can we count on them to continue voting Republican? And it was so interesting because basically what we learned was they see things at the national level very much the way we do, right? They don't like the left's radical policies, the transgender promotion, their sort of extreme language, all these things. People don't like it. But what I found most interesting was they don't see it happening at the local level. Fairfax County is one of the most radical progressive counties in the country, and people don't see it. They thought everything's pretty fine in Fairfax. They also didn't even realize that out of 57 elected officials in Fairfax County, 56 are Democrat. We have only one board of supervisor who's a Republican, and everybody
that poor
else,
guy.
I know.
Can you imagine?
He's a great guy. Pat Harity, our supervisor, he's a great guy. He just keeps fighting so bravely by himself. But this is why it's so important for people to keep talking about these stories. And, I've seen people sort of step up, people who were not journalists, but got so frustrated and they just decided to step up and they start writing about it. And it's incredible to see the traction that they're getting. And I want to mention one case in particular because this is a hot news item from today, and it's so encouraging to me. So, we've had parents in Fairfax County get engaged. First, it was over the long shutdown of the schools, the imposition of the COVID vaccine, the masking policy. That's what kind of kicked off a lot of parents getting involved. But it's continued with other radical, in opposition to other radical policies. So today, there's a group called Defending Education, and they have filed a Title VI complaint with the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights against the Fairfax County Public Schools. So get this, right? Fairfax County Public Schools, 9th largest school district in the country, massive budget. They can't meet their budget. They're having to cut things back, but they can spend $5 million on equity policies. And in spite of the fact that these things are sort of going away in a lot of other places, they still have racial affinity groups, equity consultants, race-based disciplinary policies, race-based hiring. Fairfax County Public Schools paid $455,000 to an equity consultant who promised that the Fairfax County school system would see equal outcomes for every student. I mean, I'm
Wow.
sorry, but who even thinks that that's possible?
How can you do it?
It's absolutely incredible. And I just want to say, because I love this point, that there's a great article in today's Federalist about this case. And one of the points that it made, and I really liked this, they made the point that in the Seventh Circuit Court, they already ruled that attempts to balance disciplinary outcomes are unlawful, because what they do is they overpunish the innocent and underpunish the guilty on the basis of race. And I thought that was such a good point. You know, we don't often talk about the cost. You know, we talk about the benefits we're trying to provide to people we're lifting up without talking enough about what it costs to those who are being pulled down as a result. So I'm super excited about this case, and I hope that it just brings more light onto this. You know, at this stage, it's going to be a question: how much can they actually do through a civil rights complaint? Will it go to the courts? But honestly, really, the most important place where things have to change is in the court of public opinion. So hopefully with this case, more people will become aware. And I'm telling you, you know, we've talked about this a lot, because California, you've got a lot of foreign-born citizens. We are 30% foreign-born in Fairfax County. So we have a lot of first-generation and second-generation Americans. They did not come to this country for this. And if they knew about this, I think they would not be happy about it. And I think they're going to change the way they vote.
Hey guys, it's Jennifer Horn from the Happy Women podcast, and I am so happy to tell you about my friends over at Cozy Earth. Truly, this is a company that has changed my life. We all know that stress from the day, it gets on you, and sometimes that can impact your sleep. Cozy Earth helps you create a sanctuary right in your own home. You want to protect those 5 to 9 hours, you know, from when you get home to work to when you start to wind down and get into bed. And Cozy Earth is absolutely fantastic. I've tried 2 of their products. They have a whole website full of them, but I've tried their pajamas and their sheets. And let me tell you, if you want luxury within reach, this is the company for you. Truly, Cozy Earth has transformed my night's sleep. I can't wait to get into my Cozy Earth pajamas. They are breathable, they are soft, they are luxurious, and they come in a variety of colors and lengths and sizes. So no matter what you're looking for or what you might be looking for a gift, there is truly something for everyone. And then I slide into those sheets. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think I've ever had sheets that I love more than Cozy Earth. They, again, are breathable. They keep you cool at night, but they are still cozy and soft and luxurious. I know that I've been sleeping better in both my Cozy Earth pajamas and my sheets because they help me unwind and relax in the evening, truly creating that sanctuary at home. And what's really incredible about Cozy Earth is that all of their products have temperature regulation. They have incredibly soft and amazing fabric. You will love it. The softness is superior. They responsibly produce all of their stuff, so you don't have to worry about any of that. And they are durable products and committed to quality. And here's what's really cool, and I'm excited to tell you about. They give you a 100-night sleep trial, so you can enjoy 3 months to experience the unmatched quality of Cozy Earth. If you're not completely in love with your sheets, they are going to give you a hassle-free return. No problem. You're not going to want to return them, but you know what? What a great peace of mind if you want to try these sheets out for 100 days. That's incredible. Plus, there's also a 10-year warranty on all bedding products. So they stand behind the quality. Think about that. What other company is going to give you a 10-year warranty and 100 days to try them with a hassle-free return if you don't love them? But you will. These are luxurious sheets. They are going to give you worry-free sleep, and you are going to know that your investment is protected with the sheets. Try the sheets and the pajamas today. Check out the entire Cozy Earth product line. You will be addicted like I am once you do. And when you use Happy Women as your code at checkout, you're going to save 40% off the best best-selling sheets, pajamas, and more. Trust me, you are not going to regret this. Use code HAPPYWOMEN at checkout at CozyEarth.com. CozyEarth.com. Use code HAPPYWOMEN. You'll save 40% off on your order. Happy Women for 40% off at CozyEarth.com, where your own personal sanctuary awaits you at Cozy Earth.
I believe that you're right. And I think we're already starting to see the shift because many people who do come here for the right reasons are coming to escape governments that the left wants to turn our government into. And they can see that, and that's the fight. It's not. And I think also people as humans like merit-based systems. The thing that made my skin crawl that you just said is that everybody has to have the same outcome. That's not going to happen. You're not playing to anybody's strengths. And I think people are wise enough to realize that, I'm not going to be a mathematician. I might be able to help you write an essay, but I'm not going to be able to help you solve a quadratic equation. That's just never been my strong suit. I'll try, but everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses. And I just think it is so unfair that we continue to lie to people and tell everybody that with the same circumstances are going to have equal outcomes. That is not the beauty of humanity. Sadly, we need to celebrate our strengths all together. And it's just sad. And I do want to ask you just a question, because as we were talking about this, I started thinking about how things seem like they could be shifting a little bit. And sometimes I feel like maybe I get too optimistic. But, part of what drives the reveal for people is the news media. And I mentioned to you, we've had some local news that seems to be a little more curious than they used to be. There was a story that broke in California this week as well about a local reporter in Sacramento who found out that lawmakers were using non-disclosure agreements to block information to the voters about legislation that they were writing, about taxpayer dollars that were being spent. Great example is when they raised the minimum wage to $20 for fast food workers, there was a carve out for bakeries. Like, it made no sense. Okay, so you have a bakery, you bake bread on the premise, and you don't have to pay $20 an hour. Well, it turns out that one of the owners of Panera Bread was actually a huge Newsom donor. And when asked about whether or not there was a special carve out from the legislature who wrote this, the legislator said, well, we can't answer any questions because of this NDA. So this is not the only example, but there have been many, whether it was COVID or other taxpayer-funded programs, they're using NDA so they don't have to tell people about this. And a local news outlet, KRCA, shout out to them, revealed this. But do you think there's going to have to be a shift with the mainstream news media to get more accurate information out to people? Whether it's the story with Joe Biden lying about his health, we don't know. We're hearing that story this week about prostate cancer, and this could have been a huge cover-up, to his cognitive decline that the news media covered up. How much more can they do until they have to start regaining the trust of the people again? And then is that going to be ultimately a shift towards the truth, and maybe some goodness comes out of all of this?
I personally am not optimistic about the mainstream news.
Knew you were going to do that to me.
I'm sorry. But, okay, no. But I'll tell you where I do see room for optimism. I think it is in the remaining local news sources, right? Local TV, local radio, the whatever few local newspapers have survived. I feel like maybe they are a little bit less ideologically committed, because that's where I'm seeing sort of more diversity of viewpoint. And I'm seeing if there is a case of a local scandal, a local corruption, a local for us, MS-13 gang member arrested, I tend to see those local outlets maybe just a little bit more willing to report the local news, right? Because if there is a big local story, I think it's harder to ignore it than at the national level, right? So I don't know. I will embrace your optimism and hope that yes.
Just a return to sanity would be nice. All right, one more fighter to tell you about, and then we got to talk about this new study on marriage. And that other fighter is Bill Asaley, who is the U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California, just appointed by Pam Bondi and President Trump. And as California sanctuary state policies are kicked in, that means they cannot cooperate with the feds. You got Tom Homan coming with ICE to try to collect people who are in this country illegally. They are not going to hand them over
quietly in the jails without a warrant. So to go around that, we have Bill Asaley now in the U.S. Attorney's Office who is scanning. He's gotten together he's gotten Drug Enforcement Agency, he's gotten ICE, he's gotten ATF, he's gotten Homeland Security all together scanning databases of prisoners who are currently incarcerated on their release dates to find out if they are here illegally. If they are, those people show up in those databases and they show up that they're illegal. They are filing federal charges against them so that when they get out of prison, they have to be transferred over to federal authorities rather than letting them out back into neighborhoods, putting everybody's life at risk, trying to get them back into custody again. Here's a bit from Bill Asaley on this operation.
The system with warrants for criminal illegal immigrants that are in county jails, they can ignore a detainer, but they cannot ignore a criminal arrest warrant. They have no choice. They will comply. And if they don't comply, if they interfere in our ability to arrest a federal felon, they can expect to face consequences.
Always a workaround around the system, and well done to Fox News nationally covering that story. It's a whole operation, again, with all of these agencies, multi-agency effort to do the right thing and to get these deportations in gear, especially with those people who are already violent criminals who are just going to be released with a little slap on the wrist. So good news. All right. You have a study about divorce and marriage. Let's talk about the marriage first. That could be more fun.
Okay, so I have to say first, let me set the stage here, because what this story begins with is me flying from Virginia to California to see our daughter. And I ended up just watching a film on the airplane, right, which I probably would not have watched, called Millers in Marriage. This is a film from last year. Good cast. About 3 couples. Okay, spoiler alert, the couples all fall apart.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's really, it's really a story about people being unhappy, wanting second chances, second chapter of life, and it's a really sad story about the state of marriage. And then I have to say, last night with my daughter, we watched actually one of my all-time favorite movies, which is the 2003 film Something's Gotta Give with
it's a great movie.
Keaton and Jack Nicholson. I mean, that thing just makes me laugh on the floor. It is so funny. But again, it's kind of a sad statement. It's all about broken marriages or people that can't get married. And it's, even though it ends on a happy note, it's still sort of a sad statement about relationships and marriages. So this is the context. I'm feeling frustrated. Why is our culture delivering us all these terrible images of marriage when we are learning more and more every day that when marriages end, it has really negative consequences for children? And this is something I know you and I, near and dear, we share this because we both come from divorced families. I think you're a little more forgiving of your parents than I am of mine.
Had to work through it.
So, and I'm older than you, but my parents got divorced when I was 10, back in 1970. And I've talked to my mom about it since, and she has said, at that moment in the country, there was really, it was sort of the trend to say, oh, well, marriage, it really does. I mean, divorce isn't really all that bad for kids. And it's more important that the two people in the marriage are happy. And if you're going to be happier outside of marriage, then go pursue your happiness, right? Do what it takes to be happy.
Only you never find the happiness.
No.
That's the sad thing.
And I will tell you the other thing, even as a kid, I mean, I've got to say, my personal experience with divorce, it was devastating. It was utterly devastating. Not only did my parents get divorced, but because my mom remarried, we were hours away from my father. And I can't tell you the number of times, the memories I have of the Avoca Airport in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, where he lived, of me just in tears because I was saying goodbye and I knew I wouldn't see him again for months. It was terrible. I hated it.
Awful.
And I feel a little bit vindicated, I guess, because I knew that it was a lie to say that divorce doesn't negatively impact kids. And I thought it was very interesting. So there is a big new study that's just come out. Part of what's unique about this is that it's a massive study. So this group of authors, and you can find this study at a website called Institute for Family Studies. They are not the authors, but they do a really good analysis of the study. But the people who conducted the study looked at the tax records for over 5 million children who were born between, I think, I'm trying to remember, like 88 and 93.
Okay.
And it was just, it was just undeniable, the findings. And aside from even like, we're not even talking the emotional side of this, but just economically and all those other things. The average income in a married family from this cohort that they looked at was, prior to divorce, $90,000 to $100,000 a year. And by household, it went down to, on average, $42,000.
Wow.
Now, oftentimes it started to come back up, but it often took years. And it's obvious if you think about it, a divorced couple goes from needing one home to needing two homes.
Yeah.
And so therefore, a lot of times what also follows is the parent moves into a worse neighborhood so they can now afford a less expensive home. I thought it was also really interesting. They found that post-divorce, fathers would typically work 16% more hours, and
Less time with
mothers,
their kids.
yep, and mothers would work 8% more. So I just think, if we are learning how impactful it is when marriages fall apart, why does our culture have to dish up all these negative images of marriage? How often do we get to see a really positive, beautiful image of marriage? We don't.
I want to give you a compliment because you said, well, maybe you forgave your parents more. And I have. I understand we all go through those things, but I'll tell you, it has screwed up my long-term relationships. I'm so proud of you that you went through what you had to do, but yet you still have a happy and fulfilling marriage that you have stuck with and that you've raised two kids in, and that it's never easy. Nobody has a cakewalk. It's never easy, but I never knew what a healthy relationship looked like. I mean, my parents were together, then they weren't together, then they were back together, and then they were all, I just never knew. And so that's actually impacted my future relationships. Now, have I forgiven my parents? Yes. What I am super grateful for is that what was different than your situation is that my parents always vowed to stay close together, and they still are friends today because even though it was probably some unhealthy stuff that we all went through, but at least I didn't have to have that distance.
Yeah.
But that's why I got into the business I was in, because I wanted to spend time with my dad. So I started working at 12 so that I could actually spend time with him while he was trying to start a business. It's weird how those kinds of decisions, for good or for bad, impact the kids. And definitely when it comes to the longevity of my relationships, this has always been an issue for me because I don't know what healthy looks like. And it's scary. You don't want to get it wrong. But I would say, what's interesting about that study is that I think that there's a shift, Katie. I feel like young people now might be valuing marriage more than people in my generation. I think exactly what you're saying is true, that if you're not happy, it's all about you. You don't think outside yourself. You don't even have to prioritize your kids first. It's if you're not happy, you need to make change instead of sacrifice, which is a very real part of life in any relationship. But I feel like I was just listening to something, and I think it was somebody from the Turning Point USA circle who was talking about how young people, they believe, or studies are indicating that more young people are putting a priority now on marriage. So we're talking about young 20-somethings that are actually seeing the benefits of this. So I'm curious. I'm curious to see if there is a cultural shift. And believe me, I don't think it's for any lack of trying of Hollywood, because Hollywood continues to show these divorce stories, the saga. There's almost like a brave element of the single woman who's like fighting it all. Not that that's bad. We all find ourselves in different walks of life, but I definitely think we could do more to celebrate those lasting relationships, the one that really do work. And yeah, it would be nice if our culture showed it. But I'm actually hopeful for young people. Don't you see that shift a little bit, maybe in your kids' social circles?
I definitely see it. Yes, I see it there. I think there is also something happening at the cultural level. Something that you and I've talked about a little bit is just the whole approach to mental health and happiness.
Yeah.
So there is a big shift happening in that world right now, where there is sort of trying to, I think, focus a little bit less on like mental illness, right? And more toward human flourishing. And it's really interesting because this is kind of coming out of the intersection between religion and psychology, right? I would say how do I explain this? Like, people who were religious came into the psychology game, I think, late, right?
Yeah.
But then once they did, they really started to change it and shift it and shape it. And it's really interesting how it's had an impact now on our broader understanding of psychology and what it takes to make people happy. So I think you're really going to hear more and more about what is human flourishing? What are the conditions under which we flourish, right? And it's not just the absence of mental illness. It's family, it's connection, it's meaningful work, it's being engaged in healthy relationships, being connected
It's spirituality.
in our community. Yes, 100%.
Believing that there's something greater.
Absolutely. I think that's a very big factor. And when you talk about your optimism with regard to the younger generation, I think also one of the reasons I share it is because I think there is a very powerful thing happening on a spiritual level in the younger generation. I see so many young people on social media talking about their faith and the importance of their faith and being really out with it, being really, forward with it. And I think that's a great sign as well.
In fact, I think that's actually the story. It's, again, funny you brought it up because I was just listening to some young people talk about this. And I told you I thought it was the Turning Point Circle, but they were talking about how young people are returning to church, sometimes even without their parents. Like young people might go with a friend's family or something. They're finding their way back to church and to religion. I think that's very positive because that's where you're going to get the embrace of the family and the power of the family and the family structure. And I don't know, I think that's the good piece to all of this. I'd love to see Hollywood follow suit too and give us some more pro stories. But I guess people like to see suffering, so you always feel better about your own path, right? They're like, "Well, I'm not as bad as Jack Nicholson, so we might be doing okay."
There you go. Exactly.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. What a fun episode. We went from patriotic hero fighters to marriage and everywhere in between. Make sure you check out Katie's book. It's called Next Gen Marxism. You can get it wherever you get your books. You can also go to her website, katiegorka.org. You can search for her on Facebook. Just search for Catherine Gorka. You can also find her on Twitter at Gorka Katie. And you can find me too, Jennifer Horn Radio on Facebook and Instagram and at Jennifer Horn on X and on Truth. And guys, we appreciate those 5-star reviews. So please keep them coming. Share Happy Women with your friends. All you have to do is go to SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Happy Women, and you'll find us on all of our platforms. Thanks for joining us. It's another episode of the Happy Women Podcast.